All right, today we are going to talk about the business of education. Welcome to How to Build a Tent, the podcast on how to make you successful. We are at G3 with Marcus Pittman, Chocolate Knox.
I'm back again.
You're back.
I like this show.
Oh, I like that you like this show.
I do.
You're like
I'm a
my
big fan of the show. The biggest fan of the show.
That's important to me because you're like my mentor.
Oh, well. Is that why I'm here?
It's so you can be blamed for when it goes
when
wrong.
Hey, you know what? This is such a good show. I will take the responsibility for when this show goes bad.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That happened 100 shows ago.
And I'm going to tell you why I like this show so much. Yeah, okay. No, I don't believe that for one bit. But the reason I like this show so much is that you're ahead of your game, man. You really are.
Thank you.
And we've been talking to C12 people, Mike Shiro and a few other folks, and the conversations that we've had in private about why Christians need to engage in business. The Bob Fu that we talked to recently about some of the persecution that's happened with our brothers and sisters out in China. What Christian businesses, the influence they have, like when you talk about being successful, it's not just for the purpose of saying, hey, like in the charismatic sense, I'm rich. No, this is more about, this is how we spread the gospel. This is how we can protect our brothers and sisters that are out there in China. Look, I love you, but I'm not going to do business with you if you're going to treat Christians this way. You got a great product, but I don't care that much about it. I love my brothers and sisters more. You can't make those kind of decisions if you're not in a position that has a company that does business like that. So those are things that you've been saying and you've been talking about way before we've had those conversations in the background. And so I just appreciate your insights on this, and I appreciate what you're doing to help Christians get in those positions so that the gospel can spread in more than just one genre
Amen.
of the kingdom. Yeah.
Now, Marcus, you tell me something great about me. Just kidding.
Well, no.
Oh,
I have seen that. I've seen this show recently, like this week, and I was like, man, like Matt has like this confidence about him when he does his show now and stuff.
Oh, yeah, he hot fire.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I got the soundboard on your show, sorry.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So we're just going to end the show right here.
Yeah, it can't get better.
Can't get better than this. No.
Yeah. So where are we at, Matt?
Well, we are at first talking about Kingsman Grooming Products, a sponsor of the show, a listener of the show, and a great Christian brother.
Okay.
There's a threefold reason why you should go to KingsmanGroomingPros.com. One, they are a Christian company, and that we should be supporting Christian companies that are building, that are looking to further the kingdom of God. Two, they have phenomenal products that you already use. Beard products, hair products, leather products, boots, bags, all those things. You might as well keep it in the family.
Yeah.
And three, you get 10% off when you put HTBT in the show note.
Yeah, so they support you as number three.
That's right.
That's right. So support the people who support us.
Yes, just support everyone.
Yeah.
And so go over to KingsmanGroomingPros.com.
I need to get some of that product.
You do. It's fantastic. I use it on my beard. It's wonderful.
Really?
I never used product before. I
Is
never
that why
got
your
it.
beard's looking so juicy?
That's right.
Okay, brother. It makes sense now.
And what did you used to ask me to do to my beard? Make it sharp?
Crispy.
Crispy. Make it crisp. Yeah.
Crisp it up. You know what that means?
I still don't know what that means.
I got some clippers at the house. When we get there, I can line up your beard and get that joker crispy.
You're going to reform my beard?
Well, yeah. I'm going to post-mill that beard. That's what I'm doing.
And the last contractual obligation I have to do for now is say that we are part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network, Cross Politic. You can see in the background for those watching on YouTube. Go over to fightlaughfeast.com. Put in HTBT in the drop-down. You'll get a sweet 15-ounce mug, tons of great content with Chocolate Knox, who produces all of it. Right? Is there anything you don't produce on there? Yeah, he does it all.
Yeah.
So you know it's all great. So go over there to flfnetwork.com, put in HTBT. All right, so I wanted to talk about on this show something that Marcus and I were talking about at lunch in the business of education. And a little background on this from why I want to talk about it is because it seems like there's this kind of hedging or moat that's getting created around academia. And we were kind of just trying to spitball on why. And first, I want to ask our host is, do you get that sense too that there is like this elite circle in Christianity specifically that is almost kind of putting the gates around themselves to keep people that aren't in the club from rising up in business and in education and things like that?
Interesting. Marcus?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What would be your example of that?
Well, I think like one of the examples that we were talking about earlier was just in terms of like academia. So one of the things we were talking about was R. Scott Clark's tweet this week when he was talking about how elders of my church don't have an accredited degree. They haven't gone through the seminary system.
Yeah.
And he said some people see that as a feature, not a bug. And that's why it should be a problem. Like, because he's saying it is a bug, and people are seeing it as a feature. But I don't see that the seminary education system is what qualifies a man to be a pastor or to be.
No, the church does.
The church does.
Yeah.
Especially like raising up men locally, especially like at Christ Church, the way they do it.
I love that system.
Through Greyfriars and stuff like that.
But they still send them to NSA. They get the
Of
languages
course.
and other things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not being opposed to education. It's about who has the authority to qualify this man for the ministry that he's engaging in.
That's right.
And what is Gracefire for those that don't know?
Greyfriars is basically I think the church runs it. It's a seminary school for men, but it's really seminary through engaging in church business.
Oh, practical seminary.
It's practical seminary. The church is the one who's doing it. The church is the one who's leading the conversation. And so they're learning their languages. They're learning how to preach. They're learning how to exegete scripture. They're learning how to do everything through the church and not some sanitized. When I went to seminary, the first thing that I picked up on was that this is such a sanitary environment to learn how to go to war from. You know, I'm going to have bullets flying at my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to engage in real life situations, and I'm learning about, how to do that. And it's such a sanitized world, and life is messy. It's not sanitized that way. And so men come out of seminary, and they have this romanticized idea of how it's supposed to go because they only learn these techniques and tactics inside a sanitized environment, and the people who learned and teaching you these techniques never tried them in the real world.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so you're wondering, like, why isn't this working? Why are my people leaving me? Why, why is this so? Well, that's actually how it really operates as a pastor. Mm-hmm. And then so, I realized that sanitized environment, we have too much of it. And I think they know that, which is why they require so many hours of outside, 124 hours. Okay, go. But this backwards.
Mm-hmm.
This backwards. They need to go the other way around, And so, I agree that there are some seminaries, some churches or some seminaries, should I say, who are trying to ward off the idea that it's just about us qualifying people. So we can train you, but the church has to give the call.
That's right. That's right.
The church has to be the one to say, we want this person to come here. We need that pastor to come here. We're calling that pastor. So I think they see that as a problem too, but I think they're trying to fight it. A lot of the seminaries, we kind of got it backwards. The seminaries aren't accountable anymore to the churches in that way.
That's right. No, that's absolutely true. I think one of the concerns that we were talking about was accreditation. So if somebody would say like my pastor James White, his college degree isn't quote accredited, and then
James White ain't got it accredited.
It's not
college degree,
right? So
if James White ain't got a credit college degree, nobody's college degree matters.
He's not educated enough.
But see, we were talking about has anybody ever looked at what the requirements for accreditation is? Like, for example, having a financial aid department on staff,
HR department,
or HR department, but specifically in the financial aid department, you're saying you need, in order to have an approved degree, you need a department that works to take money from the government to fund your school.
Right.
Like that's part of what would have made James White's doctorate, acceptable. And there's other accreditation departments.
Well, yeah, because part of
accreditation have that
accreditation
and don't have that.
Yeah, part of accreditation is your peers saying you're good enough to be on our level.
Yeah.
And that's really what ultimately at the end of the day, that's really what accreditation is. And so you can have. I was just talking to somebody about having local accreditation.
That's what you would think you would want accreditation to be.
Well, yeah, but
that's not always what it is.
Right, because what they're saying is, we want to know the standard in which by accreditation really works. If you don't have an HR department, then do you really? Is that something to hold against somebody for accreditation, or is it really about the education? And so it's not always about the education.
Right.
And so people can use that to let certain schools that they don't like into a certain accreditation area. For instance, there's some schools that can have national accreditation, but don't have any local accreditation because the local folks don't really like them that much.
Right, that's right.
So they can be accredited locally and not be accredited, be accredited nationally and not be accredited locally. And so, those are things to care about, but to me, those things to care about if you are looking for certain careers. As a minister, those are not things to care about. Mm-hmm. And honestly, in this business world, right, so in the time that we're in now, accreditation just don't matter no more.
Yeah.
The product is what matters now.
It's the work you do.
Right, it is the work you do. And so to go back to what R. Scott Clark was saying is that some people look at it as a benefit. What is the word he actually used?
A feature.
It's a feature, not a bug. I don't think it's either. I think some people, maybe it will benefit them, some people it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But
right.
it's not something to say like, oh, you're automatically
Like,
not qualified.
I know, me personally, I should not have gone to school. Middle school, high school, homeschool would have been perfect for me. And then college, I was terrible at college. I hated it. But
They
once
hated you, Marcus.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But they took my money, though.
That's usually when you know you're in the wrong place,
they
when
took
you
the
hate
money.
it and they hate you.
Yeah. But we'll take your money.
Yeah, we'll take your money. But for me, it was once I actually got out there into the real world and had to fight to survive. I mean, like I went out there with Wretched, got fired after 2 weeks, and had to decide: do I want to sell cell phones or do I want to, make videos? Like that was, the choice I had to make. And it wasn't until I was placed in that situation. No amount of college could have prepared me for getting fired after 2 weeks of moving away from your family. Like no college education can prepare you for that, or how to come back from that. And so that's what, for me, I had opportunity at my job last year to hire somebody, and I was going through resumes, and my boss was sending me resumes that
Wait. Yeah, this is hilarious. So a guy who drops out of college gets into a high-end media company.
Yes.
And is hiring people who have college degrees.
Yes.
Just want to bring that up. Okay.
So my boss was sending they were going to her email, and she was sending me the resume she liked the best, and it was always film school. And so I was rejecting them.
Yeah.
Not because they went to film school, but because the work that they sent was awful.
Right.
And so I said, please stop sending me stuff that go to film school. So I asked one guy when I was doing the interview. He did go to film school, and the first question I asked is, why did you go to film school as opposed to just hustling and making stuff and putting stuff out on YouTube and stuff? And the answer he gave me was pretty much, I just wanted to, learn how to do this. And so essentially the answer he gave was, well, I'm not self-motivated. Essentially, it's just, I wanted people to do the stuff for me. I wanted everything to be provided for me. Yeah. Right?
Things not to say in an interview.
Yeah, things not to say in an interview. Right.
That's the hot tip of the show.
Yeah, he didn't get hired. But I wound up hiring a guy who didn't have a college film degree and was just excited and passionate about doing the work.
Yeah.
And he took out a loan to buy his own camera gear and stuff for his family.
Because he believed in his own. Yeah.
He knew that if he took out the loan, there would be a risk, and it would force him to take it seriously and do it.
Yeah.
So that's what he told me. And his stuff was good, and he wound up replacing me after I left. But he didn't have a college degree. Mm-hmm.
So
still haven't found a guy with a college film school degree.
Well, that's one of those interesting ones because the work tells on you really quick. There's nowhere to hide.
Right.
No.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, that's it. So I just wanted to say, so we would all agree that an education isn't necessary anymore in today's world.
I would say education is extremely essential.
Education is necessary. Yeah. College, higher, what do you want to say, universities?
No. I'm just saying to pick the right place to get an education from.
Okay. And what is the right place?
YouTube.
You know what?
YouTube.
I'm of the mind. I want somebody who's been discipled in the same way that Gray Friars work, where they're following and working with the pastor to learn how to be a pastor.
Okay.
That they're getting an extremely high-end education, but they're getting it from somebody who's in it, who knows it, who's mastered it. Who's put in more than 40 to 50,000 hours doing this thing. You know what I'm saying? And so I just want to say that not everybody deserves to have that type of money thrown at them to learn from. And so you need to. I went to Darren Doan. I said, "You're a filmmaker. You made over almost 500 music videos. Show me how to make movies. Teach me the craft. Show me the." And he wasn't just showing me how to make music videos. He was teaching me the business of music videos. Hey, you get $20,000. How much of that do you need to keep in your pocket? Preferably all of it. So you need to make that videos for as little as possible, and you need to make the video that makes it look like it's 3 times more expensive than what you can. You know what I mean? He's
Right,
walking you
right.
through the business of this.
So you were educated by apprenticeship, not educated by
That's right.
university.
That's right. That's right.
And so would you say that it's not required to go to university, but you could also do it through apprenticeship? It's not required anymore for most things.
I think any job can be apprenticeship.
Any job.
Yeah, so I would say
Doctors, lawyers.
Yeah, absolutely, especially doctors. Like that's isn't.
I don't agree. I
mean,
don't disagree with that.
Isn't that what do they call that when that period when they're
doing it anyway.
Internships.
they're doing the apprenticeships? They call it residency.
Residency, yeah.
So that's essentially apprenticeship.
But there's a place that they have to get to that point, right?
Right. I'm
saying
saying
they could-
start them younger and just have them do the residency longer.
yeah.
You
That's
know,
a
if
good
you have
point.
a teenager in your church, if you're a doctor and you have a teenager in your church that's really into healthcare and medical school, let them spend some time in the office and do paperwork and
Okay,
stuff.
let me push back on
That's
this a little bit.
ideally what you would do. Government won't let you do that.
No, of course, no.
But-
We don't live in that world. Matter of fact, when that's done over in other countries and they come over here to America, they don't respect any of their doctor degrees or anything like that.
Right.
So I think the reason that we have a problem with universities for the most part is because the thing that's supposed to be the unifying thing, Jesus Christ, isn't there. So then all of a sudden what you have is you have these fractions in separate different rooms that are all supposed to be pointing to Jesus Christ so you can understand how his world operates and works. But instead it's become a fractured universe, a fractureversity. You know, it's not a university, it's fractured. So then you have all these separate things that don't point to the main thing. This is Jesus Christ's world, this is he's Lord, and so you need to know how to operate in it where it comes to science, when it comes to literature, when it comes to arts, and so the reason that there's a conflict I think that we have with university education is that the unit isn't there anymore.
The foundation's gone.
Foundation to
They're not
unify.
acting logically.
We need to unify all of these topics under the lordship of Jesus Christ, and when you do that, your education is robust, right? And it's vast. But when you don't do that, what you end up getting is a fractured. You don't know why this is connected to that. You don't know why science works if you don't have a religion department to tell you about the lordship of Jesus Christ. You know, these things are important, and so that's why I think there's a conflict here, because I'm not opposed to universities.
Yeah.
I'm opposed to how they operate in order to communicate education.
That's really good.
You know,
I
does that
like
make sense?
Yeah.
right.
Okay,
That's
let
right.
me. I want to push back on Marcus a little bit. So some of you may have heard this, some of you may have not, but Marcus just had open heart surgery.
Yes.
Woo! Thank you,
Couple
Jesus,
weeks
for
ago?
bringing them back. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Woo.
Woo. Oregon, come on. Thank you.
Yeah, a month ago.
A month ago, and
ago
you are
Tuesday.
here in the flesh, walking around, eating Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I feel really good, man. I'm on the downward. I got 2 weeks left.
No,
of
you're on the
recovery.
upward.
The upward. The
Yeah.
upward.
Hey, yeah. Hey,
So I'm doing good.
Come on, Jesus.
I
This
got,
is what's missing in my show.
I got 2 of the largest adult heart valves
glory.
in me
Hey,
possible.
what else God do for you, brother?
Pentecostal G3.
I was told that I do not have an aortic aneurysm.
Ooh.
I just have a very large aorta.
He ain't got an aortic aneurysm, whatever that was. He's doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Can
And
you run yet?
Me and the wife walked 2 miles.
He done walked 2 miles. Come on now.
Felt great.
Felt great.
Went shopping 6
Went
hours.
shopping. Yeah, and made it to the G3 conference.
And made it to the G3.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
You
so
all right
I'm
over there,
doing-
Matt? You ain't-
Oh, gosh. I love this so much.
So yeah, I got more energy than probably since you've known me.
Yeah.
I think
Well, here's what's crazy. Like,
So-
I think you said you've been operating off of, what?
like
30?
10%,
10%.
30. Yeah.
Marcus,
Wow.
you've been out here kicking butt in the film world and working, building ministries on 10%.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy to see what happens when you get
Yeah.
90 mo.
That's because you don't know, because it doesn't happen all at once.
Yeah.
So you just think, oh man, I'm out of shape.
Well, that's
But-
probably true too.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Preach it.
But
Yeah.
there's a reason, because the brother couldn't run, the brother couldn't walk. Okay, that's enough of that.
Okay, so here's the pushback I want to say. You're saying that you would want or prefer medical doctors to not go to medical school.
Yes.
Would you be comfortable with a doctor who didn't go
That's a
to
good- ooh.
traditional routes to open your chest cavity?
Well, it depends. I mean, like, when you say like didn't go through traditional routes, like what does that mean?
like how things are today.
Would you want an Ethiopian doctor who
Uh-huh.
didn't go to college?
Has
who's done
some potions in the background.
Who's done like 6 or 7 of these before, maybe 30. Are you comfortable without him being accredited?
If he's done it and like
What's wrong with you people?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I'm not letting him operate on you, Marcus. I love you better than you. I'm just saying.
Well, but is the assumption that if they're not in the college system, they can't become skilled at what they do? I'm not saying someone unskilled.
No. I'm saying that
I wouldn't let someone unskilled.
I am even careful about the kind of mechanic that I let touch my car. And I want some sort of a credibility to that mechanic so that if something does go wrong, I can hold him accountable and he just ain't going in the wind.
So you're saying by what standard?
That's right. I want some sort of, the reason I don't like this is because it's a double-edged sword, because you started creating accreditations like this, and now you got to hold that up, make sure that they're holding to the right standard.
Mm-hmm.
But we do need some sort of loving your neighbor setup to say, yes, he's qualified to be operating and cutting you open with a knife to manage your heart.
Well, let's say you're a doctor and you have a kid.
Yeah.
And your kid has just followed you around since he was born.
And I know that he can do it.
And he's been taught by you and
right. Yeah.
You know, the way it was done back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time that kid's 18 years old, he's got 18 years of medical knowledge just from being your son. You know what I mean?
There's two things I think to bring up about that. There's one of them is that you're right, because doctors aren't all just surgery. Right. Not all doctors do surgery. There's doctors there's a vast variety of what kind of doctors we need out there, and a lot of those trades surgery can be unique.
Yeah.
But a person who's learned under a surgeon and knows all those details and can maybe be accredited by that surgeon. He's approved by Dr. So-and-so, who's been approved
just
by
like elders, right?
Just like, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the same way. Then, I would have full confidence to see his work and who trust him to operate to say, yes, he could do this. But I don't want to say just because of the fact that we have accreditation is a reason not to, no. I want those checks and balances. They just don't all have to look the way that we've thought that they needed to look in order to be valid.
Got it. So there would still be some kind of accreditation process. It just wouldn't necessarily be after you went to school for 8 years or however long you go.
Right. I mean, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for education and stuff like that.
My buddy spent $250,000 just to go through med school.
And you think, I should feel safer now because he spent so much money, but that's really, he could have gotten that education.
And he could have been a C student.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's not.
You don't ask their grades.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And something else, just a quick tip I heard from one of my colleagues whose husband's a surgeon, that you can request sharp tools because not all the time they come out with sharp tools. And that,
wait, what?
Yeah, and that impacts your scarring. If it's the less sharp it is, the more of a scar you're going to have.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows what it's like to cut with a dull knife.
Right. So there's actually companies that you can hire to come in and sharpen the tools to make sure that they're legit.
That should be just status quo. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Marcus, did you ask for sharp tools?
I have no idea.
Let's see that scar and let's try to guess.
But I'll tell you, it was interesting because, when the surgeon came in and spoke to me and my wife for the first time, we never asked him. Like, we didn't ask. We just assumed that he was good. We didn't ask about the college degree. We knew
funny?
He was employed by the hospital. We trusted the hospital. And we asked him because he said he needed to do 2 heart valve replacements instead of 1. And my wife said, well, is there like a bigger risk to do 2 at the same time? And he said, not if I do it. And I was like, I like that.
He's got the job.
Yeah, he's got the job. Like, see, that was more his confidence and like that he could do it was more important.
Yeah, he could have been like Leonardo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can, where he's just like conning everyone. But hey, at least he had the confidence, right?
He was confident.
He was a confidence man, right?
Yeah. So, but I think his accreditation was based on the institution that hired him,
right?
Not so much, and although the institution hired him based on his
education,
his accreditation.
Okay,
but.
Sorry,
ultimately, when it comes to purchasing a product, it didn't matter about his college degree.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah, and that's the truth with every profession mostly. They just look that you have it. They don't care how well you did or even necessarily what school you were unless it's like the Ivy League schools. It's like, oh, you got it. Okay, then I can keep you going through the process and if I like you or not.
Right.
Is basically what it is. All right, so after we get back from this break, I want to talk about why is there this hedge, this silo from the intellectuals from keeping these kinds of things happening that we're talking about, these alternative ways of education, apprenticeship, like it was back in the old days, because I think there's some interesting things to consider with that. But first, we need to talk about our sponsor, faithfulcounseling.com. They are an on-demand counseling solution where they have licensed therapists, 3,000 of them in the United States, where you can call them and get them through text, video, chat, through their web service. Anytime, 24 hours a day, they can help you talk through depression, stress, and what's great is that they have Christian counselors that align with our faith, and you can have confidence that they share your values. So if you go over to faithfulcounseling.com/HTBT, you'll get 10% off your first month. Go over to faithfulcounseling.com/HTBT, get 10% off, and get somebody to talk to that is a licensed professional that probably went to college and got.
Are they approved by ACBC?
No, but they're approved by Matt, so that's all that really
They're
matters.
approved by me. And you know, it's an amazing thing, and people get shocked by this, but I get a lot of emails, and I get a lot of people that come up to me with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and those things, because for some reason, entrepreneurs have these issues, and it attracts people that have these issues. So I actually get a lot of emails about this kind of thing. So it's kind of cool to have a sponsor that matches that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so there is, I think we've all agreed to this in the beginning, that there is this circling of the wagons of protecting this higher education system, this current structure that we've created. And we've talked about, we don't need it necessarily for the professions that we have today. We don't need to go through these systems. There's a better way. There is a cheaper way. So why is this pushback happening, do you guys think?
Money.
Money. Because it's a business,
I think
right?
It's protecting
Every institution has to protect itself.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have an institution to do these things, but institutions don't change easily. They're like huge ships, military ships.
Mm-hmm.
You probably can get them to change, but it's going to take a whole lot of people doing a whole lot of work. And when they even get it turned far left, it's going to drift that way. So you can't see that change happening right away, but it still needs to happen because institutions, regardless of we like it, even if you reject their view of how they're doing it, you're still going to have to create an institution to battle that one.
Yeah.
So you don't get away from institutionalism.
But do you think the price of education, especially from an academic institution, is overinflated?
Of course it is.
Yeah, something I talk about on this show a lot is what value is, and I.
But don't pay the prices, dummy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, people do.
I mean, I'm just look.
Because it's our culture. It's if you're going to be successful, you need to go through the track. The track is you go to college right after high school. You do your 4 to 6 years or however long it takes.
You know, I'm sorry, Matt. If people listen to shows like yours, they wouldn't have to do that.
Amen.
I'm not even being funny.
I know.
You are on this show have told people what success really looks like, and I think Darren Doan even we talked about this. He's like, he's a successful filmmaker. He's like, if somebody comes to me and say, hey, send my kids to film school, I look at them and say, don't waste your money. Take $10,000 that you would spend on this, let them go make their own film and have to market that film and have to recoup that $10,000 to the people they got it from.
Yeah.
He's like, in the time that it takes them to do that, they might do it over 1 year. He's like, they will have a full education on filmmaking and the business side of it they would have never gotten in 4 years of college.
Yeah.
So,
that's exactly what Marcus was saying with his interviews that he was doing.
Right. And so, but that's the thing. So when we want to measure success and what you're going to have to talk about what is education for. And then if that, once you understand what education is for, then how do you measure what success looks like?
Well, I think simply we can just say it's a transfer of knowledge, right? That's what education is.
Education is a form of worship. Education is worship.
Okay.
Education is communing back to God what he's communicated to you. So when God says, when you see something, okay, so God plants a garden eastward in Eden, right? He has these rivers flowing out of it. Go look and take and make that place beautiful like this place.
Right.
And in order to do that, there's things you have to learn about that world out here. Your blueprint is what God has already made. So when we start talking about education, it's a form of worship.
So when you say worship, you mean it is a response to how we see God in our lives?
It's covenant faithfulness, right? It's the fact that God has said, go do something, go be fruitful and multiply, go take dominion over the earth. And your first response is, amen, right? It's yes, amen, Lord. And your second response is then to go do it, right? To go, well, what is that thing? What interests you? What do you love? What pushes your heart? Do you like to see the stars? Well, maybe you need to think about rockets. Maybe you need to think about some sort of glass that allows you to see stars closer. I mean, whatever your interests are, you're going to naturally find those things to educate you to be able to fulfill those things.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, but you'd only do that, and it only works if your heart is bent towards worship towards God in that process. I love the way Pastor Toby talks about this. Is everywhere you go, everything you do is an altar. And everything that you do, you're worshiping at that altar. So the question is, how are you worshiping, and is it proper worship? Because if you look at your Old Testament, God burns people up for the lack of proper worship.
Right.
And if we haven't read our Bibles enough to know that when we sit at altars, we sit there and do whatever we want to do.
He burns people up in the New Testament, too.
Absolutely.
What? The God of the New Testament does that?
So
Yeah.
I think there's some correction on what we need to think about when it comes to what education is for. And then when you think about it, then how do you get that type of education? And the people who are teaching you so that you can worship properly all of a sudden becomes extremely important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So why are the people that are supposed to be doing this acting so threatened and playing defense?
Yeah. I think Marcus is right. You know, there is
It's a power play, too, right?
Yeah, there is a power play. But
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's an idea that if you have that degree, you're part of a status. It's a status symbol.
Sure.
And once you have that degree, you're part of a circle at the top.
I think it's more security than it is power play.
Yeah, possibly.
You know.
Yeah, but it is protection, sort of protective
Yeah,
sort of system.
I think that comes after you get into the institutions where you have a who tenure and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That plays a part
right.
into it. But I think I don't disagree with you on that. There is more about most people going into the workforce are concerned about themselves, about being able to provide long term for the people that they love, their
But
families.
I think my question is, so that there was a tweet from someone who's in the academic system. I won't say their name, but they were saying, what if you got a PhD degree online, and then you taught students, and then they got a PhD degree online, and then you taught online, and then it just got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And she was saying that it devalues the education system, right?
It devalues their product, but not the system
That's
itself.
exactly right.
Their
so,
image.
So my question is, like, it benefits a company to get their price cheaper,
Yeah.
to get the price of their product cheaper. But in the education system, it's the complete opposite. They seem as if the value is when it's higher, when we provide.
That's because
you
we're
know,
not talking about
campuses
education
and all
right
these
now
other
anymore.
things.
Now, what we're talking about is free market economics now.
Yeah. Right.
You know, now we're not talking
That's-
about, you know what I'm saying?
that's exactly right.
We're talking about, you know, are we now with the technology that we have able to lower the price of education so more people can get educated? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we
Of
can.
course.
We didn't lower the value. We lowered the benefit of going to universities.
Because a professor now can teach one thing, and it can be cycled for.
We've de-siloed the information that once was held in these universities,
Yeah.
where these people could have the audacity to say, like, hey, I have this knowledge, you got to come learn to me.
Yeah.
It's no longer like that because of technology has dispersed that. But at the same time, because we are not in a free market.
We're doing a live show here, guys.
Yeah, sorry, that was Toby Sumter and Jamaican Gabe being extremely rude. I'm sorry. Just give us like a few more minutes for me to have a legitimate show, guys. Please, thank you.
That was actually extremely rude.
So, but at the same time, because of government intervention, as the benefit has gone down, cost has gone up, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
there's been inverted
That's
value,
true.
and that's why you see certain colleges, even here, that are giving the first year away free, giving big discounts. It's because they can no longer compete on value, but they're trying to compete on price. And I think they're getting nervous and they're getting scared because they're seeing their relevance
Well,
dissipate.
when you decide to spend multi-million dollars on sports teams, multi-million dollars on facilities, multi-million dollars on golf courses and resorts for your college students, and you see somebody competing with you, you can stay at home in your bed and
Hey,
get
don't
education.
don't forget the ski slopes.
And ski slopes. you start guarding your institution a little differently because the competition is fierce. Yeah.
Right,
I mean-
right.
All right, so I guess we're getting cut off. Any last words about the business of education?
Yeah, just get a Christian one.
Get a Christian one.
You're a Christian, get a Christian education.
Yeah.
If you're married, what is it? How's it go?
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. You have kids, go baptize them.
Yeah, Keith.
Baptize your kids if you have children.
Thank you for listening, Marcus. Thank you for coming on the show. Of course, Chocolate Knox.
I love this show. I
Thank
love
you
being
so
here.
much. I
Thank you.
appreciate the kind words. Now
Yeah,
let's go
brother.
out and be successful together. God bless.